reinforce the horse.
Reinforce the horse.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic.
All right.
So, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, I think you said something about you wanted to discuss a bit about riding.
Yeah.
So take it away, because other than that, I don't know what you had in mind.
All right, so, I guess riding is a very,
And we're talking horseback riding.
Yeah, horseback riding, hopefully, yeah. So, anyways, riding is a very large step in training, as many of you horse trainers may know. I am a first-time horse trainer. I'm training my very first horse, and I've had her for, 8 months now, and I have yet to get on her. And there's only a few things keeping me from doing that, but the training to ride is like, you start the training as soon as they come home, and finally when you're able to get on them, I bet it's this like magical moment. It's this, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it'll be different now that we're very, very connected. I don't know, that's something that I'm interested to know, even those of you that use, natural horsemanship methods for training. What's the first ride like? That's one thing I haven't experienced, but today I kind of wanted to talk about the trust that I believe comes with the riding process, and have experience with riding, with Mocha, Cody, friends' horses, horses at camp, and just the ways that they acted toward riding. And I know you could come in and talk about you and Cody and your experience with riding.
Yeah, so as I've mentioned before, riding to me, of course, was purely recreational. No like ranch job or anything needing to get done, and no like competition or anything of that sort. Just purely recreational. And I would say I placed like horseback riding when I got Cody as my top priority, above and beyond anything else. And so my expectation in getting my own personal horse was to ride, and ride immediately. It was kind of like, in my mind, like buying a dirt bike or a quad or something like that. It's just like, that's what it's there for. Wow, was I so wrong in that way of thinking. And that was just, a couple years ago. Sitting here today, it's odd for me to even voice that as my mindset. Because, and we've mentioned it before, like, they're living and breathing, and they have feelings, and Cody so eloquently and politely demonstrated his feelings to me, but I was 100% not in tune with any of them, any of the signs. Like, I was looking for the big ones, like, horse licks his lips, gives eye contact, all those cocks the foot, all those sorts of things. But I wasn't in tune with the very subtle cues. An ear twitch, slight shift in posture, not even a step, but just a subtle shift in posture, subtle movement of the head, no movement of the body at all, and perhaps just a difference in eye contact and positioning and energy, if you will, of the eyes.
So now I want to ask you, since you've been riding Cody, say maybe recently, is there a huge difference in your mindset and how you can communicate with him than when you sat on him for the first time?
Oh, most definitely. So if I had to kind of explain how, or yeah, if I to explain that in more detail, it's kind of like, you know, an electrical wire uh, that either has a short in it or it's a brand new, you know, greatly made electrical wire. You know, when there's a short circuit, things don't go too right. Um, and so when I first started with Cody, again, being very green on my own in the world of horseback riding and horsemanship in general, um, I was very much short circuited. It was like the cabling, if you will, between Cody and me, like really didn't even exist. You know, and so when I would try to do something or ask him to do something, it was his patience and grace that allowed me to not end up with broken bones every single time. Had nothing to do with me. Like, all him, his patience, his grace, because as I've demonstrated in other conversations, he really wanted nothing to do with me, other than the fact that I do think, you know, we were kind of drawn to each other in the way of a partnership. And, you know, we have talked a little bit about that in previous sessions, and we will continue to kind of flesh out those details when it comes to partnering with your horse and how that relationship actually begins. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, yeah, there was really no communication between him and I.
So do initially. You feel, I mean, you're kind of alongside me with training Willow, you're kind of retraining Cody, but do you, as like I guess we could say you're a horseman, a horse rider, do you feel like you need the ultimate amount of communication to ride, or do you feel like it's one of those things where, I mean, might as well just mount that horse because she's trained? I think they are such awesome creatures that they don't require it. They desire it and they want the utmost in communication and connection with us. But they're so incredibly resilient and awesome that they will work with what they're given or not. Yeah, that is so true. I like that you bring that up, because there are, like, I mean, we've mentioned this before, so many different ways to train a horse, and neither being right nor wrong. It's a preference. And I mean, that's one thing I've learned through training, is that it all comes down to what your ultimate goal is, how much time you may have, you know, on all these other factors. And the horse, I mean, the horses don't know the difference between this training method and that training method unless they've experienced them all, and you may even be able to see, you know, a choice for this one versus that one. But I don't know. I mean, I've never really seen them ask for a particular training method, considering we've been pretty set on one.
Well, so, I'll disagree with you there, because working with Cody is a perfect example. So he's what I would call really sluggish in the round pen. Mm-hmm. His gait changes, and what I've learned through reprogramming and retraining, mainly me, not him, is that his sluggishness has nothing to do with being lazy or disrespectful or anything like that. Like, that's scientifically proven. Has absolutely nothing to do with those things. But it has much more to do with his trust or lack thereof in the partnership relationship. So the more trust that's developed and the greater communication because of the trust, and vice versa, the more fine-tuned he is and has become. Like now it's almost without any hesitation. It's like we go from a walk to trot. Just like
Before that was like pulling teeth.
yeah.
Yeah.
And trainers in the past have been like, okay, well, you just need to, essentially apply more pressure, but, be very, focused on when you release that pressure and yada, 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 right? Like, you don't want to. But I've had people recommend spurs in riding, which I'll never use the spur again.
Yeah.
To each their own, I suppose, but they're unnecessary. I'll never use them. And I don't know. So the more we develop that trust and communication, the more fluid he is. And it's really similar to me, like in the world of like auto mechanics, like when the car gets a tune-up. So if you can imagine like a vehicle with like dirty engine oil, maybe a partially clogged fuel filter, and an air filter that's, more or less clogged. If that engine even starts, it's probably not going to run that great. And even if it does run and get from point A to point B, it's going to be burning a heck of a lot more fuel. It's going to be inefficient, and the lifespan of that vehicle, that engine, is going to be diminished pretty rapidly. And I feel that's really similar to like the horses. Like you can push and prod and tie and force and otherwise control them into doing things, but as we know, that ultimately affects their nervous system and ours, by the way. And it affects ultimately their lifespan and their quality of life while they are living. And we know that firsthand.
Yeah.
We've seen it, so that it's really cool. So as that relates to riding, and I guess to like more directly answer a question that you did ask is like, how's that related, right? You did ask that, right? To some degree. Or did I just go off on a tangent? How that relates to riding in my mind is the smoother the engine, the smoother the ride.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I mean, like I've said, I've ridden horses. I've ridden Mocha. I've ridden Cody. Haven't ever ridden Willow yet. And I am so convinced that she'd tell me to get on her now.
I think she wants you to ride.
Earlier today, she told me to throw this yoga mat that I am now sitting on her back.
Right.
And she stood there with her head fairly low. And she gave me all the indications that she was enjoying said yoga mat on her back. And so it kind of like, she's given me a lot of indication that if I were to sit on her, she'd just be like, oh, hey, how's it going up there? That feels kind of nice. Like, she wouldn't really care. And I guess I wouldn't really say that she wouldn't care. She'd feel like she trusts me enough to sit on her. Now, prior to getting Willow, I had watched so many, like, ways using natural horsemanship of, training a horse to be ridden. And it was pretty much like you tack them up, you get them used to the saddle and, bit, bridle, everything else. And, I mean, they're probably going to want to buck, so you got to get that out of them. You got to, like, force them into staying still while you mount and move their feet.
Yeah, the horse has to learn to give to pressure and yield to pressure all the time. No matter what pressure stimuli it is, it's got to learn to give and release to that.
Yeah, and that's like exactly how Mocha was. And it was interesting. Like, Mocha was diagnosed with gastric ulcers, within the past year of us having her. And it was, like, interesting because her whole mood changed. But I didn't know why. Like, she'd always pin her ears, even when I went to brush her. And Mocha was never, like, she didn't really like to be touched. She was kind of like, leave me alone. But she was very, she was forced to be touched, and she knew she couldn't do anything about it because that was her training.
What do you mean she was forced to be touched?
Like she had to be. She had to stand there and be touched. She didn't have a no thank you. She couldn't say no. And
you mean as a function of her underlying training?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like, I'm gonna touch you. I want to touch you. You need to let me touch you.
Right.
And you can't do anything about it. You better just stand there, or you're gonna get your feet.
There was no choice afforded her in her training process.
And so, I mean, when she got hurt, or I mean, got this, I don't really know what. When she got her ulcers, she started just acting weird. Like she was. She didn't know how to stand there to be brushed, and she would kick out and I mean, she'd like turn in a nip and do this like weird. She'd like move away really quickly and then like throw her head. Like she was just acting like she had forgotten all of her training. Now, I mean, little did I know when the vet had come out, he was just like, well, that's ulcers, and he was like that. Like it explains everything. And I was like, that's really interesting. Like, had she, I wonder still to this day, had she had the choice to, express whether she actually wanted to be brushed, ridden, saddled, this, that, and the other thing, I would have caught that a lot sooner.
Or would the question is, like, would she even have developed ulcers in the first place?
Yeah, it's...
and that goes into feeding regimen and stuff like that. I have a hunch that she wouldn't have developed them.
Yeah.
Or the case would have been much more mild. She did have a pretty severe case.
She did.
It was treated pretty well, and then, as you know, I mean, she did get better, and some of those quote attitude issues or whatever were reduced.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they weren't eliminated.
Yeah. And even the riding, like the riding, when I used to go and like mount her, even riding bareback, like she just had this kind of like meh attitude about it. Like she didn't actually want to be ridden.
But she was submissive.
She had to be.
And that's what we're talking about. So like, as we talked about before, like communication, not control, and our hashtag communication, not control, and I would say she was shut down in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
And by shut down, like I think when I've heard a lot of people talk about horses being shut down, it's like the extreme side of things. But let's face it, like a lot of just like very subtle aspects of her emotional state was shut down.
Yeah.
To the extent like she didn't really like to be touched. She didn't really enjoy the human interaction.
Yeah.
With the exception of you to some extent. But it's completely different in my mind than what I'm seeing unfold with Willow and Cody.
Yeah.
And this brings up an article that I read last year. And I can't even remember the location of it. But the essence of the article was that this small study that was done, their hypothesis was somewhat proven that horses don't actually bond with or to humans.
I remember that one.
But they made mention that, like, it's well known that dogs bond with humans and are, like, scientifically proven. I couldn't disagree with this article and the study more. Either that or I just don't really know what bond connection truly is. But I would say that Mocha was pretty typical in the horse world.
Oh, yeah.
And so my theory there and where I'm going at with this is she would demonstrate, like for most, she probably didn't have a connection, a bond. And one could even say, like, she didn't even have a bond with you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that at all between you and Willow, or even Cody and me. You know, like, we're bonded, like, and however the horses do that, and however we do that with them, you know, it, in my mind, it's a bond.
Yeah.
And I don't need, like, I don't
need evidence.
Yeah, I need to, like, scientifically prove it. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, seriously. But, and I mean, I would totally agree. Like, I've never, and I mean, I guess a lot of it came before with my inexperience with, you know, our training the way that we do now. I've never had a horse tell me yes and no before Willow. I never knew that you could train that before Willow.
And some might watch that and be like, that's not what's going on. It absolutely is.
Oh, no, they completely understand.
They 100% understand when they're saying yes and when they're saying no.
And I know this because, I mean, for example, training the blanket or the saddle pad, for a horse that has never seen a saddle pad or a blanket before, it's scary. It moves, it makes noise, it looks weird, it's scary.
And so the typical, I would say modern type of approach to do that is wave it at them gently and get them to submit and release to that pressure.
Instead, I had Willow taught to, I mean, long before training this behavior, she knows yes and no. She'll touch the cone for yes, she'll stand chill for no. And she was clearly communicating with me, you know, okay, throw the blanket on my back. And I'd go and throw it on her, and she'd stand completely still. She kind of looked at me like, that's kind of weird, but she stood still with no force. She had no halter on. She wasn't tied up. And, you know, she told me at a time, like, she would double tap the cone to tell me to take it off. And so I'd take it off, and she'd, like, she'd take a deep breath. And then next time she'd say, no, thank you. And she would, like, caulk her foot or lick her lips. She'd give me some indication that she was happy for me acknowledging her no thank you. And then she'd say yes again, go and throw the blanket on her, and same deal. And by the end, you know, when we took the Christmas pictures of her, you know, of that blanket training, she was like, okay, go ahead, throw the blanket on me. And she was like licking her lips and caulking her foot with the blanket on her back.
Yeah.
And then today with the yoga mat, like, hey, that looks kind of like a blanket. That goes on my back. And that was really cool.
And so the way this relates to riding, I mean, and you've already demonstrated in some ways. I mean, like, there's no doubt in my mind that you get Willow out right now and, like, up alongside a mounting block, and you can sit on her no problem.
Oh, yeah.
and again, you know, the reason why you haven't done that, you're
hooves
being really smart about it. You know, her hooves and vet visit and all that kind of stuff. And I think paramount to those things is just you're not in a rush.
Yeah, I'm not.
And actually having fun developing that relationship and not putting more pressure, riding or otherwise, on her.
Yeah.
That she doesn't necessarily need to do at the moment.
I mentioned earlier, I mean, you start training for riding when you bring the horse home.
Mm-hmm.
This is one thing, like, I mean, for me, riding is it's fun. It's recreation. It's something that I love riding. I feel, I don't even know. I just feel
right. It feels
freaking
great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love riding. And so, you know, bringing home a wild Mustang, it's always been a dream since I was, since I, like, was able to ride, or to talk. Like, it's been a dream of mine to sit on to ride a wild horse. I mean, you've seen those cartoons, those movies of, like, these people just, like, oh, you know, taming the wild horse, and they get on him, and they're just, like,
yeah.
loping or cantering or galloping, just, like, bareback and bridleless on this previously wild horse. And I'm like, show me how to do that.
Bucket list, right?
Yeah, and so it's been, you know, a dream of mine. And, you know, I'm not saying Willow's cooler just because she's wild. Willow's cooler simply because she's my friend. And
that's really cool.
She has this connection with me, and as much as I, like, want to sit on her and ride her, and as much as I feel like she would let me, I mean, there's other stuff that needs to come before that. And man, I tell you, that one day that I'm able to just sit on her and she'll tell me yes and no, and
yeah, and you don't have, and you guys will watch and listen to this all playing out. Alyssa's not going to have the typical problem of,
my horse bucks and kicks.
Yeah,
and
a newly trained horse. And that's not to say both of you are going to be like super comfortable and a rainbow's going to sprout out,
yeah,
and
100% of the time.
I'm not saying that.
I'm not either.
What I'm saying is that you're so in tune and having such a open communication relationship you are going to understand and see and acknowledge the subtle cues that she provides you if she's like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this.
Yeah.
And instead of you saying, well, you're going to be comfortable with it,
acknowledging it and redirecting, and
you're regarding her thoughts and her feelings and taking note of that and actually taking action on it
and helping her
before you or her get into a uncomfortable space where somebody gets hurt.
Yeah. And that's like, it's awesome.
It's super cool. I'm excited.
She's learned, through bringing her home, it's been a roller coaster, but so fun and awesome. And since day one, it's, we've been preparing for riding. We've been, practicing the yes and the no and walking with me, and recently allowing me to, she'll tell me to get on if I come, and I'll wave my hands, I'll put my hands over her back, and I'll ask her, hey, can I get on? And I wait for her to move her shoulders toward me, and when she feels my hands, she gets reinforced. And that's the closest that I can get to riding right now, that and, the blanket. But that, man, that's like, it's an accomplishment even there. And I'm teaching her to back up for no thank you, which is breaking a lot of natural horsemanship rules there. But it's just like that's as close as we've gotten. And the next step is getting her medical needs taken care of, and hopefully, getting us both comfortable to ride.
Yeah. And I think you're right on track.
It's going to be, I don't think that it's going to be entirely difficult, but I think it's going to be very emotional. Because I've never sat on a horse that has told me to get on. My dad has. He's done this with Cody. He's literally taught Cody, hey, can I get on? And if Cody wants him to, he'll turn in and he'll be like, yeah, go ahead. And he'll stand there for him to mount. And if he doesn't want to, he'll, his ears will kind of go back, not agitated, just no thank you ears. And then he'll take a step back and then look at him for reinforcement, because he knows he gets reinforced. But I've only ridden horses that have really not wanted me to be on them.
Yeah.
Mocha is a perfect example. I used to go to horse camp, and you remember riding those horses. They were like zombies. Yeah.
So on that note, everybody, thanks for listening, and definitely keep listening and watching, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, because we have a lot more in store as we further develop our relationships with our current horses and even bringing some new horses home.
Yeah.
So take care, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks so much. Oh,